Perfect. As everybody is getting started and loading up their Zoom, we'll get started in probably about 2 minutes or so to let everybody check in. I see a lot of people coming in as participants. Thank you all so much for your time. Again, we'll get started in about 2 minutes or so as we let everyone in.
Adolfo's coming.
Fantastic. Perfect. Well, we are live now. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. We've got people joining. Our numbers are going rapidly up. So we get started in about a minute or so once we get everybody to be able to check in. You should be able to see the slides up. We'll be able to just dive in. Awesome. For those of you that are just joining us, we're going to get started in just a moment. Thank you guys all for taking this time here at 2 o'clock today to be able to join us for this content. Perfect. Okay, thank you guys so much for joining us. We're ready to get started. First, let us kick it off. Welcome to the customer service during COVID-19. Today is the best practices and resource panel to be able to really do a deep dive into customer service strategies, especially given the situations that COVID-19 has created. We are thrilled to have you guys with us today. Thank you so much for taking this hour and a half out of your schedule to be able to do this deep dive in content that we hope will be incredibly valuable for you. To kick off to start, I'd like to talk you really quickly through what our agenda today looks like. We're going to go through some of those opportunities for technical assistance and resources to make sure that you have tools and tips at your fingers that you can access, share with your own employees, with staff within your organization, with partners. From there, we'll do a deep dive into some of these best practices and some of the common challenges that we're seeing and experiencing across different businesses and organizations and the frontline staff that are working with both visitors and locals. And then we're going to do a deeper dive into a solutions panel that includes a number of different perspectives that we have on the phone call today. So we'll be primarily putting that information into about the first hour from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock today, but there's also a good chunk of time that's held at the end of this session at 3 to be able to do some really intense and deep dives into Q&A for any of the questions that you guys have. And again, we're super appreciative of your time. Out of this session, we're really hoping for these 3 outcomes for us to be able to hit. First is that we're able to surface some of those common challenges and the concerns and also address some solutions that you guys can implement immediately. Second piece is around making sure that we're able to support you guys that are attending today and those that are listening to the recording afterwards with very specific, tangible communication best practices to make sure that when we can host visitors again in some cases, and as we're interacting with locals and visitors alike, that we're able to apply all these customer service strategies. And the last thing is we're going to make sure that you have follow-up resources at your fingertips for more information and tools. Before we get started, I'm going to take you through just a few quick housekeeping items. The first is that we'll be using a Q&A feature, and this is something within Zoom. There's a button that you can see that says Q&A. If you start having questions as we're going through, please be sure to send through any of your questions utilizing that feature. It's going to be the best way for us as the presenters and panelists to be able to capture that information and make sure we can maximize our time together once we get out of the panel itself. We'll also be posting this recording as well as previous recordings onto the industry website for Travel Oregon. We'll post the link both in the follow-up messaging as well as in the chat a little bit later. And then any recordings we have, both of this one and the last one, will be posted online. So we would encourage you to definitely check that out, share actively, and make sure that all of the partners that you have within your destination and region is able to access this great information. And the last is more of a request that we have a great post-session survey. It's really short, but it's a great way for us to be able to gather that feedback from you around, did this meet the outcomes that you were hoping for? Is there any additional content that you'd like to see? Things along those lines. If you're looking to get an idea of where these resources are living, we have the Travel Oregon industry website that has our virtual training, engagement, and assistance resources all housed under one spot. So that's at industry.traveloregon.com. Please be sure to check that out for all current, past, and future trainings. Without any ado, we're going to jump into our presenters. We're very lucky today to have some great support today through Gregory Price, who's the director of the Small Business Development Center, specifically with the Columbia Gorge Community College, which we're thrilled to have, and Lizzie Keenan, who's the regional coordinator with Mount Hood and the Columbia Gorge Regional Destination Marketing and Management Organization. So I'm going to pass it over to Lizzie to talk through a few of the key points before we get jumping into the panel. Lizzie, I'll pass to you.
Thanks, Alexa, and hello, everybody. Good afternoon. So as Alexa mentioned, the de-escalation and customer service training series came about for us, particularly in the Gorge, but also on Mount Hood, as a need kind of early on this summer and throughout the summer as things started to reopen, and we were getting visitors from out of state, or maybe it was just out of county, or even locals into these like front-facing businesses, and those businesses were experiencing challenges, or our land managers were experiencing challenging engagements with customers. And so, we talked about the need for more training around de-escalation. Particularly, it was around masks and mask requirements that was, a lot of issues were bubbling up. And so we heard from businesses that they wanted more information about this and more tools available on how to better prepare themselves and their staff as we kind of continue through the many phases and freezes and pauses of Oregon life, right? And so the Mount Hood and Columbia River Gorge region and the Small Business Development Center at the Columbia Gorge Community College worked together. We brought in Travel Oregon and the Oregon Hospitality Foundation to help bring out about this two-part training series. And so as Alexa mentioned, part one is now available as a video. It was a great training specifically around de-escalation, and in a minute I'll share some of the key learnings from it to get us started. But if you missed that one, I would definitely recommend that you watch it, you share it with your staff. It's just a really great resource. And it was done with help from Michael Chamberlain Torres, who is a specialist in customer service and hospitality. And so just a quick recap. I mean, as you all know, customer service is an integral part of tourism and the hospitality industry. This has become even more critical during a pandemic when the world has kind of been turned upside down and everybody's stress and anxiety levels are high. And that both is from the customer perspective and businesses and employees. And then additionally, a lot of responsibility has been placed on our businesses and our land managers to kind of lead the charge and be responsible for COVID guidelines and policies and enforcing them in a way, which has put you guys in awkward positions. Our customers may not all be aware, and visitors are not all aware of all the changing rules. And so there's, miscommunications and challenges across the board. And so maintaining a high level of customer service throughout, even when faced with really difficult customers, is going to help keep you and your employees safe. Safety as a #1 priority, but it's also going to help you maintain positive customer experiences, help you maintain your customer base through the rest of this pandemic period, and then have those visitors and customers who will want to come back because they had a good experience when we're kind of out of this. So some of the key best practices that we learned from Michael from session 1 were first off, to identify and recognize sources of conflict in advance and take preventative steps to get in front of them. And so I think my guess is a lot of you have figured out some of this already because you've been open, but there's other businesses who haven't yet been able to reopen. And so there's some good examples from these trainings that you can get just to start talking through what those conflicts could be so that you're prepared in advance on how to deal with them. The second thing is maintain composure and practice empathy. Those are huge. Empathy will go a long way. It doesn't always, but it's kind of, one thing Michael pointed out in his training is that we control our own emotions. And so the key is to control your emotions in any difficult, challenging situation. And that's going to kind of get you through it in the best way possible. The third is seek out of the box solutions. And so, any step that you can go further to help somebody who is not willing or not able to follow the guidance, but maybe you can help them out in a new creative way, try to do that, because they will appreciate that as much as you're comfortable and able to. And then finally, keep written records of any interactions that you've had. That's great in case something comes back to you, you'll have that marked down, but also it's a great opportunity to then share what you learned and those experiences with any other employees within the business, so everybody can learn from that experience. And the other last bit of that is to move on. So if you've had a difficult situation, make sure that you allow yourself to, it wasn't personal, it had nothing to do with you. Remember that and let it go and just move on. So with that, I would now like to pass things over to Gregory, who will, or am I passing things back to Alexa? Passing it over to Alexa.
The one thing that I would add before I pass over to Gregory is that I do want to acknowledge too that across Oregon, counties are following the governor's framework for a safe and strong Oregon in response to COVID-19, which does include a 2-week statewide freeze through December 2nd that will limit business capabilities, especially around social gatherings as well. So face coverings are still required in indoor and outdoor spaces. We ask that people are paying attention to travel alerts and making sure to follow any of the state guidance that we'll all be in compliance with through coronavirus.oregon.gov. So that's my last thing to add. Gregory, handing over to you.
Thanks, Alexa, and thanks, Lizzie, for the introduction and that great information. My name is Gregory Price. I'm the director of the Small Business Development Center. The Small Business Development Center is an intergovernmental agency. We're funded by the state from the Oregon Economic Development Department, otherwise known as Business Oregon, from the federal government through the Small Business Administration. And here locally, our host is Columbia Gorge Community College. So those are our 3 primary stakeholders, and we provide services for all 3 of those entities. And our work is really to provide small business development services in any way, shape, or form that it can help small businesses. One of the primary ways that we do that is through one-on-one advising. As you can imagine, in these times, we've been doing a lot of that. And that can be on any topic, any issue that's relevant to you as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a small business. So if there's any type of support that you think we can help you with, or that we might be able to match you up with, please come to us. One of the great things about the SBDC is, so our center, we work in 6 different counties, both in Washington and Oregon, but we are not only a statewide network, we're a nationwide network. We have specialty centers that specialize in access to capital, that specialize in global trade and specialize in market and research. And all of these issues that you as a small business are facing, whether it's around COVID and de-escalation in this case, or customer service, we have specialists throughout our network that are really good at this, really any topic relevant to small business. So we really encourage you to reach out to us if you need any type of support. The other thing is we do a lot of training, just like we're doing here, but we also have the ability to be very flexible, very nimble with our support, with our talent and our resources in creating additional training, creating new content. If there's something that's relevant to you, it's probably relevant to a lot of other people. So come to us if you have a particular training need for you, for your organization, and we can help you put something together. Something very relevant to this topic is OSHA's new guidelines, new rules regarding COVID that are coming out. We're going to be doing a training on that topic that's just a couple days old at this point, and keep your eye out for that. So some other resources that I would encourage you to take advantage of is certainly Business Oregon has some fantastic resources, not just financially, but their Business Navigator is a great tool to pair you with resources across the state, whether it's with equipment that you might need to protect, personal protection equipment, all sorts of resources. Of course, OHA, the Oregon Health Authority, MCMC, OSHA is another fantastic one, not one that many small businesses like to reach out to proactively, but they're really there to help us in times like this. So encourage you to reach out to them. The governor's office has probably the most current, up-to-date website on what's going on with COVID and additional resources. And then a couple new things that are coming out as a result of some of the new ruling with OSHA is the requirement for risk assessment in a COVID control plan. Those can be pretty complicated and involved processes for small businesses. So if that's something that is unfamiliar, if this is the first time you're hearing those terms, please feel free to reach out to us if we can support you in putting something like that together. But it looks like it's coming to the point where all businesses are going to need to have a risk assessment and a COVID control plan, regardless of the size of your organization. And those are burdensome. So please know that we're here to support you in any of that. So that's my piece. Alexa, was there anything else you wanted to say before we move forward?
That's perfect. I think we're ready to dive in.
Okay, well, fantastic. So we have some great panelists with us to talk about their experience dealing with the impact of COVID on their business and de-escalation, how they are managing their clients. We tried to get a range of different folks from different industries to get that broad perspective. So with that, let's start with introductions. Phil, why don't you start us off?
Hello, my name is Phil Moulton with Double Mountain Brewery here in Hood River. I'm the general manager, and so it's been an interesting time dealing with COVID, just having to constantly pivot and change and adjust. You know, we're just dealing with things we never thought we would have to deal with, and how to do them well. And the utmost concern is staff safety and the safety of our guests. So that's what we've based all of our plan around. Would you like me to go over what we do?
We'll come back. Right now, let's just do introductions, and then we'll have some questions, and we'll get into some of those exact details that you're sharing. I really appreciate that, Phil. Adolfo, sorry you had such a hard time logging in. That is 100% my fault. I sent you the wrong link, but please introduce yourself. You're muted.
There we go.
There we go.
Yep. My name is Adolfo Molinero, and I'm the owner winemaker at Tierra de Lobos Winery, located in the Dalles. We're a winery from Washington, just across the river in Dallesville, Washington, but the tasting room is located in the Dalles.
Great. Thank you for being here, Adolfo, especially on such short notice. Really appreciate that. Miranda.
Hi, my name is Miranda Mendoza, and I'm the Park Ranger 3 with Oregon State Parks for the state parks from Sandy River Delta all the way to Hatfield and Rowena Crest. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Miranda. And last, but of course not least, Gracia.
Perfect. So we'll have Gracia and myself kind of sitting in the back end. We're happy to tackle any questions. Again, if you guys feel like adding any questions as we go along, please feel free to add into the chat feature.
Okay, great. And apologies for the mispronunciation, Gracia. So the first thing that I'd like to ask all of the panelists is really how has COVID impacted the visitor experience at your particular establishment this current year? And then we'll go in the same order, Phil.
So it's changed the experience in the fact that dining has had some of the pleasantries, or the niceties taken away from it, because it's more of a utilitarian experience. You want your customer to feel safe and comfortable, but not so comfortable that they start to forget to put their face mask on when they go to the bathroom and such. So it's kind of nipped off the length of the visit. So kind of people aren't staying for as long. Maybe they just are there for strictly lunch and not so much socialization. So it's changed in that aspect.
Got it. Yeah, I see that, and I find myself guilty of that when I go and dine in as well, especially getting up and going to the bathroom, or ordering if you have to go up to the bar, forgetting to put my mask up. Adolfo, how's your customer experience changed from the client perspective?
I think it's it's the same. It's definitely the worst, I suppose. It's more work on the employees, more work on the servers, because we're encouraging everybody to to not mingle and be at their table, wear their mask when they get up, and so it's created more work for the employees or for the servers, and so we're trying to bring everything to their tables, and that obviously has implications as far as the customer service, because you have less time to socialize with them, to visit, and sometimes they're having to wait a little longer because they're waiting for you to come back to see if to see if they need anything else. So that's probably the number one thing that we've seen as far as it's just more work. It's just more work. Yeah.
Yeah, and I get I certainly get that from a lot of small business perspectives. You're being asked to do more with less, especially higher expenses and lower profits. And I know that's difficult. Miranda, I imagine you have a little different experience in your position versus maybe a retail or a storefront or a restaurant. Tell us what the client perspective is like from where you sit.
So there were actually two distinct periods, and one was when we were completely shut down. Everything's off limits, schools, work, and usually folks would look to go to the outdoors. Even though state parks is not tax supported, we're still public lands, and that wasn't accessible. And so the visitor who's used to being able to use their parks as a place to unwind and relax and de-stress didn't have that access. And we were being met with a range from both anger all the way down to just grief, because there's a lot of stuff going on. Once we reopened, it was very interesting, because now you have a place to go, you have a place to de-stress and unwind. With everything else closed, we were getting a lot of new visitors, local folks in the area who had never been out to the parks, and were getting to experience them for the first time, and were really enjoying the newness. But we also had folks who this was their usual place to relax, and there was a lot of overcrowding because places were still limited. It was kind of like after Eagle Creek when we had limited spaces for people to go.
Yeah, and I know that Josiah Dean was going to be here from the Balch Hotel, and one of the things that was surprising is that as everything seemed to shut down, many people went to rural communities, went out to the outdoors, went to where the lower population centers were. So from his perspective as a hotel owner, he's been doing well in terms of room capacity, but that's increased his challenges. And I'm assuming outdoor rec space is really in a similar position. So talk to me a little bit about your actual operations. How is it impacting your day-to-day as a business owner or manager or operator in your business space? What's changed for you? What are you having to do different?
So we pretty much had to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. One thing that we found was that, with limited table space, no bar service, really to be in the building, you had to be seated and eating and enjoying a beer perhaps. So we actually keep our front door locked, and you actually have to be invited into the building when there's a space for you. So that's one thing that's kind of changed. People are checking the front door and they can't get in. They're a little confused, but really that just protects us from, really helps us control the potential crowds, because we all know what the summers are like out here, that the crowds will descend, and our jobs have changed into being a lot more crowd control in addition to service. And then, as we've mentioned before, there's lots of extra steps now with the sanitation protocols. And with sanitation, it is key to, of course, to do it, and also to make sure that people see you doing the sanitation procedures, because my goal was to make the place feel very comfortable and clean and inviting. And so people could actually relax a little bit, so they could escape kind of, the normal anxieties of the pandemic life.
Yeah, I got it. Adolfo, how has your operations shift?
It's been exhausting, I think. Just having to adjust to everything, from the initial shutdown to what do we do, what do we offer to get people in, since at that point it was more, in just like now, what do we do? Because right now, we have a beautiful tasting room right along the river, but people can't come in and enjoy that, and can't, and so trying to decide, okay, well, what do we do? But it's just for us, it's that constant change. We have quite a bit of outdoor seating, and so initially when we reopened, we were debating whether we do by appointment only, or just let anybody come in. We decided to just not really go by appointments, because I think it was just becoming a bit more complicated, and we couldn't really guarantee people showing up. And then there were times where people had to wait for a table. But I think and that's probably the most challenging part of it, because I think people, for the most part, people do understand that these are challenging times, but there are some people that still seem to not get the point, that we're also just trying to do the best we can as well. So it's just I don't know. To me, it feels like everything that we've done, I can't guarantee that it's going to work again, and it's almost just like you just have to kind of figure things out as you go.
Yeah. You nailed it there. There's been such a high demand for innovation and adaptation at the drop of a hat, or in most cases, the stroke of a pen, as a new piece of legislation passes, either from the federal government, from the state, from OHA, whoever it may be. And I guess, speaking of a lot of rules and regulations changing, ones that I think we're probably not tracking or feel as impacted by as we are the ones that are impacting the restaurants. Miranda, I know the rules that have changed outdoor recs have shifted significantly. So how are your operations changed?
So one other thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is that because we're not tax supported, we get funds through the lottery as well as through user fees. And in previous years, usually if we have a recession, only one of those is hit. Well, this time both of them were, because we shut completely down. Our staff in the Gorge in the summertime generally runs about 56 staff members between the Sandy River all the way out to the Dalles. And we had 25 at least until August. So we were drastically reduced. When we reopened, we had a massive increase in visitation. We had to reassess because along with, providing open spaces, we're also we're uniformed employees. We do rule enforcement and such. And in a time where people are under a lot of stress from what's going on, we had to change how we approached rule enforcement. We want people to come and relax. It's not about nitpicking everybody about things that, they're doing that are on our rule list. But also try to see, okay, we can't do everything. We are unable to get to the restrooms as often. We're unable to get to the trash as often. So what's the most important key piece that helps keep people safe, but also helps them feel welcome and also helps them relax this time? And it was, as Adolfo was saying, it's just constantly changing. And it's a little bit exhausting, but it's also what we have to do right now.
Yeah, I can only imagine it must be exhausting. And I know that the park services have done such a fantastic job with making education their forefront of enforcement, before anything, before any conflict, before you even have to worry about de-escalation, there's education, right? And that's such a huge part of it. So let's talk a little bit about that. And boy, the first thing that came to my mind was, Phil, when you said you have to lock the doors. And I'm thinking of myself as a patron, how I might feel about that, and how I might get angry, or maybe I see some guy come in and I didn't know the door was locked, but he goes in and it's locked behind him, and now I can't get in, and now I'm upset. There has that created any conflicts that you've had to experience?
A little bit. We do have a takeout window that's right next to that door, so that kind of the host catches them there. And I think it just part of having that door lock kind of makes people think about where they're going into, and they can't walk in without a mask on because the host will catch them. So it does lead to a little bit of frustration, but it's people need to be present and conscious of the rules to safely run a restaurant. It's for the safety of everyone, the employees there themselves, and of course everybody's extended families that they may be in touch with.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Do you have a particular example, don't name names, of course, of a conflict that's come up that you've had to de-escalate?
A lot of this whole situation, I've been involved a lot more in the office end of things, of constantly dealing with the changes and then training my staff to deal with them.
Okay.
So I personally haven't had to de-escalate too many situations, but people now know how serious the pandemic is, and so really we're not seeing too many people that are anti-mask or not willing to wear one and demand services without. So Hood River is kind of in a kind of a vacuum of, there's a lot of great quality people here that understand what's going on. So we fortunately don't get too many issues.
So talk to me a little bit about the training that you do provide your staff. What does that look like?
It's just making sure that everybody's aware of the rules. And so once that they're aware of the protocol, they can share that with the customer, and generally maybe not such a heavy-handed way. They can kind of make light of the rules. And one thing that being in a restaurant bar industry, we already have to be able to de-escalate situations because we do serve alcohol. Right. So that's part of my staff's training, is how to de-escalate a situation that involves alcohol. So it's these situations are are a little bit different and almost easier to deal with because people's judgment hasn't been impaired. You're not getting an intoxicated person walking into the building. We're getting somebody that maybe just is forgetting to wear a mask.
Right.
So, so our staff is trained to deal with problems, and we have to safely de-escalate those, and we're also trained to use our resources, whether it be a manager, or we do have a great police department that we can call and that we can deal with situations that way as well.
Yeah, well, and I can see the experience of having to serve alcohol and having that training can really support you or give you an advantage in that respect. Are there any particular resources or tools, maybe from OLCC or OSHA or from the company itself, that you've been taking advantage of or that you'd recommend to people?
So generally, I've kind of just worked on the training protocol myself based off of using some of those resources from ORLA, which is the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association, pardon me. And so I've just kind of distilled all those points down into what we need to use here. So I guess I've kind of, gleaned from resources and have become the resource for my staff.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, Orla. They are a fantastic resource. They're certainly experts in all aspects of restaurant and lodging. And I know it's a bit tangential, but the Small Business Development Center recently partnered with Orla to create the Oregon Restaurant COVID Assistance Program. It's called ORCA. Maybe something you and I can connect with, Phil, where we're bringing experts across the state in all aspects of bar, restaurant, front of the house, back of the house, to provide support during this time. So another fantastic resource for the industry. But also, have you had to have any conflicts or any experience around public health or some of these mandates that you've had to deal with, and how have you had to handle that?
As Phil was saying, I think at the beginning of the pandemic, we had more instances where we had to tell people to wear a mask. But I think as time went by and people realized the pandemic was real, we really never have to do that anymore. I mean, I only remember one instance where we had an event and everybody was seated at their table, and there was this lady that she's a strong, no mask, and will kind of tell you, that how bad it is for you and how it's, you need oxygen and all that. And so she was the one going around tables and just kind of inviting herself to sit down without a mask. And so I had to call her out twice during that event, and eventually I just had to ask her to leave, and she left without any issues. But it's we're not a grocery store, and so I think we do, we're kind of off the beaten path, and so we're not, for the most part, I feel like the type of people that we're going to get into this kind of facility, into a tasting room, into a winery, are going to be people that already know. I mean, they've been around and they know that there's a sign at the door that says, you must wear a mask to come in. And for the most part, we have some masks here at the tasting room for, if they forgot one, and if they don't have one, they just come in and they ask for one right away. And so that has not been an issue except for that one instance.
And have there been any resources or tools in particular that you have used for yourself or for your staff or for training?
So I'm the one usually at the tasting room, and I usually have 2 other employees that are part-time because we're so small. We're usually able to just have good communication with each other, and we're able to just kind of be on the same page if if all of a sudden we have to do something differently. But I've the resources that I've been able to use is the Chamber of Commerce, the Dallas Chamber of Commerce. They've been a lot of help. Have given us advice as well. And so we get the notifications from OLCC, and we get the notifications from the state of Oregon about like what the rules that we must be following, and we just pass that along. I mean, there's no specific training that I'm requiring any of my employees to follow through.
Got it. Well, thanks for that, Adolfo. Miranda, what about you? Have you had any conflicts or any experiences around public health mandates that have come up, and how have you handled those?
So I think that most of the conflicts around the public health mandates occurred at the beginning. As both Phil and Adolfo said, when people were first still getting used to the idea, plus a lot of the unknowns, because we're primarily outdoors in the gorge. And so we're not in an enclosed space, and there's the perception that you can social distance. However, a lot of people forget we're also in a highly congested area, and some of our trails are narrow, and there was still so much we didn't know. And most of our conflicts actually weren't necessarily directly related to, are you wearing a mask, or even you being in an enclosed area. It was folks who were already so emotionally charged and stressed that it was, you'd approach and you'd ask them about, a certain, rule that perhaps wasn't being followed, and they would just lose it. And so there was a lot of us really dialing down, like, not that we're usually very aggressive. We're not cops. But we used a lot of burnt toast versus nuclear war. Is the issue that, the rule that the person isn't following, is it going to affect other visitors? Is it unsafe? Are they going to get hurt? Are you going to get hurt? Is somebody else going to get hurt? And because we're such reduced staff, is it better that we continue doing our job, cleaning up and maintaining the park, versus dropping what we're doing, going perhaps a quarter mile out of our way to talk to the person about perhaps a small thing? So there was a lot of shifting there.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like a lot of triage that has to go on. And is there specific training that you're receiving or providing that goes along with that?
So Oregon State Parks provides verbal judo training, and I'm one of the trainers for that, both at the lower advisory level for our seasonal staff and our hosts and other volunteers, and then for our enforcement officers, which goes into a little bit more depth. And the basis of that is, primarily de-escalation, listening with empathy, and then kind of understanding a key set of steps that you're trying to go through. So even when you're in those high pressure situations, you're not taking it personally, you're not taking on their added stress, you're listening for the cues that they're giving you, in hopes that perhaps you can communicate back why we're asking somebody to do something, or perhaps to find them other options.
I have never heard that term, verbal judo. I love it. Is that a state term, or is that did they adopt that? Where'd that come from? I'm just curious.
So it's actually, we actually contract out with the Verbal Judo Institute, and it originated after the Rodney King riots. And so Doc Thompson, who was the founder of it, he was an ex-policeman, but also an ex-English professor. And he kind of took both those experiences and realized that a lot of conflict arises from lack of communication or poor communication, and then developed a series of steps to help officers, and actually anybody in this industry can benefit from it. It works on your teenagers. Don't try it on your spouse.
That's fantastic. And I'm writing it down. I imagine others are as well. Verbal judo. That's a great resource, Miranda. Thank you for sharing that. So a question that maybe a little off script. If you had a magic wand, or let's say there's one resource that's missing, or something that you could provide your clients, your company, that you think would tip the scales to make things better, have a better impact on your business, your client experience? What might that look like? I know that's a bit of a loaded question, but I'm throwing it at you, Phil.
Yeah, that is kind of a loaded question. I'm trying to think of a good one single thing. I guess the magic wand would be no COVID pandemic, and things are back to normal.
That's too easy of an answer.
Yeah, that's too easy. So I would say that, man, I'm kind of stumped a little bit here because I feel like I've been taping together a magic wand for 6 months and it's finally working. So maybe I'll circle back at the end on that one for me, please.
Yeah, no problem. Adolfo, any ideas, any thoughts?
Still thinking.
Okay.
Still thinking.
Miranda, do you have any?
Yeah, I think that we sometimes look at the outdoors as an artificial area, and unfortunately the outdoors is dynamic. And so there's so much unexpected. If there was just a way to help people understand that and the way their interactions affect others as well as how they impact the outdoors, they would have a more enjoyable time and hopefully safer time. And it would help us to serve them better.
Yeah. Okay, I get that. Anything come to mind, Phil, Adolfo?
At the moment, no.
All right.
You stumped me.
It wasn't a fair question. That's completely fair. So,
I think one of the things, one of the challenges that I had also through the pandemic was finding labor, actually, finding good people that, wanted to work. Because I think that's key to, we've been lucky enough that people still want to come out and still want to, hang out and go out and do wine tasting, and we have the place to do that, but it's tough because when you have the people, nobody shows up. When you don't have the people, everybody shows up. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge that we have had is trying to predict when everybody's going to be here. So that would be the magic one, I suppose. Like, everybody come on Saturday, and then I'll make sure that I have enough help on Saturday. How about that?
That's a good one. Yeah, I know that's been tough, and finding help has been really difficult for a lot of different folks. So I have two more questions, and these ones will be pretty direct. So all things considered, with all of these issues, what do you think is the main challenge that you're faced with in regards to customer service, specifically in regards to de-escalation?
I think it kind of all comes down to taking care of your staff and each other and communication. So we can all talk things through. If a problem arises, then we can deal with a problem with many minds, as opposed to people feeling like they're kind of on an island. So I think, the one caveat in this whole situation is it has brought people together because we're all struggling through one common issue that's been tough because it's kind of an invisible thing.
Yeah.
We went through the fires with the smoke where that was a visible threat to your health, whereas we're dealing with this invisible threat. So with a good empathy towards all human beings goes a long way.
I love that, Phil. And I know in particular with the restaurant and brewery industry and the Gorge, the camaraderie between competitors is amazing. It's just not something you see in other industries. And I don't know if you see it in other states or towns, but I know around here it's inspiring. Thank you and Double Mountain for being part of that. Adolfo, what the main challenge?
So can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. What's the main challenge, given everything with COVID, that you think you're facing dealing with customer service, especially in regards to de-escalation?
Like I mentioned earlier, I think we've been working, or we've been building our business on customer service. I believe that, we go above and beyond to make sure that, when you leave this place, that you are feeling, happier. And to me, that's the biggest challenge, is that sometimes, again, because of having to do the extra work, I may not get to all of the tables and touch base with them as much as I would like to. And that's probably the only thing that bothers me the most. But, at the end, I just have to just be appreciative that we're, that at least we're being able to do something. But customer service is just making sure that they're getting the customer service that that everybody deserves, is probably the biggest challenge that we have, just because that's very important to us. That's very important to me, making sure everybody just, has a good time.
Yeah. Well, and I know there's only one Adolfo, and you can only spend so much time with so many people in your tasting room. So I certainly appreciate that. Miranda, what do you think the main challenge is facing either you or maybe the parks in general? You can answer that how you'd like.
So I think for us, it's a mixture of both what Phil and Adolfo said. Phil was talking about the impact on staff. If you work in the tourism industry, especially in the gorge or on the coast, you know that usually about August or September, you're kind of feeling a little bit worn out, and it's been busy constantly. You're kind of ready for things to slow down. And this year, that hit in June when we reopened. Like June suddenly became August. And our staff usually isn't being hit both in their personal lives, where perhaps they have a spouse who's out of work or sick, or a family member they're concerned about, and at work where we're getting this high impact. And so there was a lot of mental health checks. Even though we were short staffed, we were encouraging staff to take mental health days, plan a long weekend, knowing that, you have a point to look forward to where you can cut out. But then also, this is one of the first years where we've also had a lot of the emotional impact on the visitors. And so even if it's not a situation where there's a conflict, I can't tell you the number of visitors who have been crying in front of me because either they're happy to be out or they're frustrated, and trying to find that balance between, as Adolfo said, we want people to leave better. You should be able to go outdoors, and when you get home, feel like you're healed a little bit. And so finding that balance in taking care of yourself, taking care of your visitors, and doing it with less fuel than you usually have.
Yeah, boy, isn't that the truth? I know that when I'm at that emotional breaking point, going outdoors is usually always the best answer for me, and I know that's the case for many of us. So thank you for providing that space for us, Miranda, and all the hard work that you do. So last question before we go to the questions that some of our participants might have is share a positive experience with us that with the client, that something COVID related or that has come about as a result of all of this change. What's something positive that's come out of this?
I think one of the positive things is, when we reopened, realizing how much of an impact we have on the community and how much they rely on us to come relax and socialize, but now it's a little bit different now that you can't, jump from table to table and you're stay inside your quarantine group. But I think all in all, just the community support of all the local businesses has been really great. I mean, people could very well cook and eat at home every single day if they wanted to, but they're out there supporting the local businesses because we're part of their lives and we're part of theirs.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well said. Thank you, Phil. Adolfo, something positive.
I would just echo what Phil said. I think the sense of community and support. Also, it kind of you get to see where where you should be putting in all of your energy or most of your energy. So it kind of opens your eyes to plan for the future, and it's definitely preparing you to be able to, if you can survive this, you should be able to survive anything else down the line. So
yeah, I think you're right. One of the things that certainly brought us or helped us create is some resiliency, right? Yeah, that's the truth. Thank you for sharing that. Miranda, something positive.
I have to echo the same because I know that especially when we reopened one, having the support of the communities when we did have to close, recognizing that we did that to protect like some of the small town areas as well as our own staff. But then two, when we reopened, not having the outdoors, I know that people were really grateful to get back out there. And then two, both having the recognition that, we're all humans and we're all going through a hard time. And so the number of times where I know that our staff was able to personally connect with people and help them. In the same token, the number of times where, visitors coming in would help us, recognizing that we were so short-staffed, weren't able to get to everything. People who would come out and pick up trash and clean up the beaches, bring us water during some of those 100-degree days, who said thank you, and vice versa. We're happy to be here to help you get outside, but also thank you for your support in us.
Wow. Yeah. So it's a resoundingly unanimous community, right? That's one thing that it has helped us become more resilient and a stronger community as a result. Alexa, I see you pop back up. Hi.
Hello there. I've got questions for you. And to anyone that's participating, please feel free to shoot your questions using the Q&A feature now. We're excited to get to as many as we possibly can.
Okay. Are you going to ask the questions or?
I'd love to start if you don't mind. I've got a few that are just super ready. The first one that I'm hearing is, do any of you guys have you or have your staff had an example of going above and beyond to help a customer or guest during the pandemic?
I bet all three of them have. I'm sure of it.
So I'm unable to share details. And I'm going to see if I can do this without crying. But one of the challenges, as you all know, is the mental health impacts on people who have been stuck indoors. And something that some folks aren't aware is that state parks are well known as destinations for suicides. Sorry, this didn't actually happen in our park. There have been a number of staff who've been able to meet those people and intervene with a positive outcome. And so if there's anything that, if somebody was able to go out and come back out alive.
That is absolutely impactful and sobering reminder of the difficult times and the stress we're in. And I'm glad that you and your colleagues are there for the people who need it. So thank you. Phil, Adolfo, anything you want to share about going above and beyond?
I would say that just in general, pretty much my staff is going above and beyond every single day by being on the forefront of what's going on. So every moment there, I'm about ready to tear up. I love my staff and I love my people. So just having them be there for everyone is going above and beyond, I think, in these days.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll second that with all of the frontline. I don't like using the word essential employees so much because we all are, but thank you. Adolfo, anything you wanted to add? He may have to, I know he's in his tasting room, so he might have to go deal with something.
Perfect. Phil, I have one that's specific to you, if you don't mind. This question, they were asking more about strategy. Have you tried using rope barriers or line dividers? He was curious about if that would work as well as locked doors, especially while at the same time allowing airflow.
So Double Mountain is, our space is actually very suited for what we're doing. We have tall ceilings, we have good ventilation, and we do have dividers on the sidewalk, or demarcated lines 6 feet apart. And also we had a velvet rope out during the hotter days so we could separate the people from our outside dining. So we have things in place, and we've just found that having that front door just kind of just helps that flow, because Hood River is a fairly touristy place, and there's just no place for extra people to go to. We don't have a public bathroom. Bathrooms are for customers only. So we've tried quite a bit, and we've kind of distilled it down into the things that work really well for us.
Perfect. Thank you. We appreciate it. Great. The next question comes from the Southern Oregon coast. Are there any specific tricks that are used to identify and recognize some of the sources of conflict?
Definitely somebody that doesn't have a mask in their hand or around their neck is a way of, that's somebody that's not ready to be around, to socially distance properly. So that's one way to identify a potential problem. Of course, going back to OLCC training and being able to see an intoxicated person that maybe has then lost their social inhibitions and doesn't care about masks anymore. So things of that nature.
So for us, in our training, we teach people to listen past the insults and some of the words being thrown at you. So for us, a lot of times we'd get a lot of violating constitutional rights, or trying to smother or control, people just expressing the fact that they're mentally frustrated and they need something. And to be able to deflect that and then go directly into what do you need and how can I help you do it? I'm here to help you. And not to say that 100% of the time we always had a way of doing that. But sometimes, paraphrasing back, what the person's frustration is and why they're feeling frustrated, and then having options. And I'm not going to say that always did the trick, because for some people they were frustrated and they didn't want to hear. But for about, I would say 80% of the people that we encountered, the second I said, look, I want to help you get to what you're trying to do. So tell me what it is you want to do. And I'm going to see if I can come up with a list of options. And then if I can't for today, usually sometimes weekends, I was much more restricted. I could say, look, if you're going to want to do this a different day, here's what I would recommend. And everything would just kind of.
I love that a concept of a list of options. I think that's just a fantastic idea. People like to have choices. So I think that's brilliant, Miranda. Thanks for sharing that.
Perfect. Our next question. So Orla was mentioned as a great resource for gaining some fresh tools for work under COVID. Are there any other favored resources that you guys would recommend? Some of the recommendations here were like OHA, OSHA, OLCC, and Travel Oregon. And I will supplement with some of the additional content too that I'm aware of.
I think those are the ones. Those are the main resources that I've run into. Of course, my bosses are resources too. They're great at researching things. So I don't really have a particular source other than those that are mentioned.
I would add there can also be some great resources at the depending on what it is you're really looking to get support for. But as I'd mentioned, Business Oregon has great resources. The Department of Labor can have great resources. The governor's website has fantastic resources. The Lewis and Clark Small Business Legal Clinic is a fantastic resource for when it's, legal issues that you might need to resolve or you need that level of help. They're usually the first people I recommend if you do need something like that. Of course, Columbia Gorge Community College has fantastic resources. The Mid-Columbia Economic Development District has wonderful resources as well. And of course, the Small Business Development Center, if we don't have that, we can usually find them for you.
Perfect. And so that all attendees, especially coming from Oregon, which the majority are, there's a few Washington folks here, you have a small business development center, you have OSU Extension, you have an economic development district, all of which have those resources listed on their website that probably include some regional customizations as well.
Yeah.
One thing that I also want to highlight is how much the Oregon Hospitality Foundation is doing right now to create some really great video series. Many of you that attended our last workshop on November 4th got to see that preview of the video specific to COVID, and that curriculum is coming out very soon. Some of you saw that video, so I'd highly encourage you to be watching on the Hospitality Foundation website to see so many of those training resources and materials coming through, because they're pretty impactful.
And just as the FYI, if you are in Skamania or Klickitat County, you certainly can come to our SBD Center, even though you're in Washington. It's just an FYI.
Perfect. One of the additional questions that came in that I'd love to tackle is we have the opportunity today to have a number of panelists that are representing the Columbia Gorge, and they wanted a little bit of intentionality behind that. The Gorge is such a high use area where there's so many interactions that are happening per capita around experiences with visitors and with locals. And we're seeing a number of different industries represented across restaurants, craft beverage, state parks and public land. So there's a lot of universality around that, where the best practices and lessons can be applied to any part of Oregon. It's not just specific to the Columbia Gorge. There's just so much that's happening there that we thought we'd get a really great example from a specific region where the best practices are universal to everyone across the state.
And one thing I would add to that, when it comes to best practices, the Columbia Gorge is often looked to across the state for a wide range of things. So I'm awfully proud of that, of the work that the panelists have done here, the folks who have put this presentation together, all the work that's done in the background. They really contribute a lot to the best practices that the state uses quite often. So cheers.
Perfect. Tying into that, the Oregon Health Authority has signs that you can download, and there are sites where you can custom order. One of the questions that came in is, do you have any suggestions on some of the friendly sign verbiage about requirements about masks before entering the business?
A lot of the signs we've made have been in-house because we kind of want them to be branded along our brand. But definitely the health department has great signage. Some of my purveyors, like US Foods, provided us with some great signage. So there's quite a few resources out there.
And I'm assuming, is there a place where people can go to get support in other languages? Do you know anybody?
That's a great question. I don't know, but I'd love to find out.
We have our own in-house translator for Oregon State Parks, and then most of the government signs now where they're trying to get them, especially regionally, where there are different I'm trying to think of the best word to say is primary languages. For example, Portland, it's primarily Ukrainian, Spanish, and Vietnamese, versus Southern Oregon, where it's primarily Spanish and English. We are working to expand those, but not only that, consider visual, and then hearing. And so like when you're masked, I've ran into this multiple times of having to recognize fairly quickly that somebody can't read my lips, and having to pick up sign language for that, because sometimes I'm in a place where I can't. Yep. Yeah. So there are a number of things that we're still working out, but slowly those are coming through.
Yeah, that's something I had not even thought of. Yeah.
That's a great one. I'm also getting the question of people are curious about that new course that's specific to customer service and COVID. Where do you get that resource? There's a sneak peek on the website that I'm about to put in the chat to everybody. That also includes an announcement of when that training is going to go live. So please check out the link that I just sent you. Cool. So one of the next questions that we have is that, this is a little bit more lengthy, so bear with me here. Being that one of the positives is that people are still choosing to eat out and support businesses is so essential. What might be some of the best things that you've done to capitalize on that, given that the main revenue generating tool for the industry has been hindered, which includes reduced customer service and experiences just to have availability due to the mandates?
So we've been trying to figure out safe ways to increase revenue and whatnot. We've had to really kind of pivot multiple ways. Traditionally, we didn't do very much takeout service, and now we are doing a lot of takeout. And you can also order online. And then we also just launched a delivery service yesterday. So that's what we're doing to kind of be able to bring things to customers that they're at home safe. So if we can help them be safe by bringing them our products, that's a great thing.
Adolfo, has there been anything that you've done to pivot to try and address lower capacity or look to other ways of generating revenue?
Yes, we have.
Don't tell them about your eggs, because I don't want anybody else coming in buying your eggs.
Well, here's the thing. It's always like, what is that additional thing that, you know, you can offer that no one else is offering, or that it's going to make them come and get a bottle of wine. Like this time, for example, I'm taking an approach of wait and see. I'm gonna wait and see what happens in 2 weeks. If I don't have the sales in 2 weeks because, you know, people are just not showing up, then I'll have to get more creative. But right now I'm thinking I'll just hold on for 2 weeks, and then if maybe people will support. It's obviously this time around it's a little more concerning because we've done this before. And I think the first time people were like, okay, well, let's jump and let's support all of the smaller businesses. And so this time is like, are they going to still do that? You know, because I don't know if there is going to be a second, you know, COVID check or whatever. But yeah, it's for us, it's, you know, we're trying to like, what can we do extra? We started to add food, but, you know, at the end of the day, we also kind of come back to the same thing as, we're a winery and we're going to offer wine. And so I'm trying to also stay true to what we do, and also not trying to put ourselves into more work, because when we were doing that at the beginning of the pandemic, and we started like offering wine, and then we added some paninis, and then we added other stuff, like we were just over our heads, and it was just more and more stressful in our end. And yeah, we got some sales, but we were not selling as much as we could, and we were not also, you know, we're just wasting a lot of food. And so like this time around, I'm like, you know, I'm staying true to what we do, and that's just selling wine. And if that fails, then I'll have to think of something else. But for now, that's what we're doing.
Well, and Adolfo, that makes a lot of sense in that there can be a lot of opportunity in pivoting, and as Phil said, maybe providing takeout, but it can also be a huge financial burden and a drain if the market's there or you're not positioned to take advantage of it or to provide that service, and it strays too far from your value proposition. And it can be a good way to end up going out of business. A couple of suggestions that I have that are pretty universal, and I think most people have done them now, is one, just make sure your website's up to date. That is just so important. It needs to be current. And when I say up to date, I mean daily. You need to have it fresh. People need to know exactly what's going on, whether they can come in, whether they can get takeout. They need to know all of your options, and those change regularly. Give them multiple options to pay. As many options as you can, all the hand-free options that are out there, so they're not just reliant on using their credit card, because there are so many different ways that they can do. And of course now being able to have the virtual menus is a pretty easy way for people to see what your product is, and it doesn't need to be a restaurant to have those UPC coded menus available to people.
Totally, that makes sense. Also seeing comments come in the question box too. People are mentioning that absolutely keeping your websites up to date and your phone message and also your Google listing. And if you're looking for how to update your Google listing, we've been able to do a Google My Business training that's also on the industry website. So check that out. So you've got that resource in your back pocket too.
Yep, and there are more we're actually doing a series of Google business trainings on how to improve your search engine optimizations, to making sure you're on Google Maps, to just about every service they offer. We'll be doing a series starting the beginning of the year. So that's something to look for as well.
And Gregory, is that applicable through the entire SBDC network to the whole state?
Yeah, it'll be open and available to everybody.
Perfect. That sounds great. I have one thing that I want to go back on because I've got some great feedback coming through the Q&A feature. And that's just that regarding translation of signs, there are through OHA signs in many languages, CDC as well. Specifically, the Oregon Health Authority does have signs in Spanish. And for Barb, I want to call out your great comment that came through too. For individuals with disabilities or individuals who speak a language other than English, OHA can provide information in alternative formats, such as translation, large print, and Braille. And we'll include that information in the follow-up messaging and post on the industry website. So thank you guys for that feedback.
That's great.
Cool. Well, that has covered so many of the questions. There is one outstanding one that I may want to do a little bit of research on, but the question is, does anyone have any clarity on employer obligation to pay for COVID-related quarantine? We had a partner of a client that was sick, so there was employee exposure. We had her go to the hotel despite negative tests. 2 weeks later, who pays for that loss of income? And if it is the employer, is there any way to get compensation?
That's something, if you want to give them my contact, that I can get some clarity on for them.
Perfect. That sounds awesome. Cool. Well, I believe that has covered all the questions that have come through. Yep. Perfect. That's everything.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Miranda, Phil, Adolfo, for taking time out of what I